What the hell are you doing? Tyler Whitestone's voice cuts sharp as he steps into his gleaming Manhattan penthouse, his crumpled suit betraying a brutal day of tech empire battles. Marble floors shimmer under LED lights, floor-to-ceiling windows framing New York's neon skyline. Heading to the master bathroom to hang his jacket, he catches a soft hum and dripping water. Pushing the door, he freezes. Shaniqua Ellis, his stunning black housekeeper, blue uniform, crisp, sleek hair bunned high, sits against the tub, cradling her infant Amara in a vibrant green wrap. A scrub brush in hand, bleach fumes thick, a soapy bucket teeters nearby. Shaniqua, what is this? Tyler snaps, fury flaring at her breach of his no outsiders rule. She rises, elegant yet defiant. Amara, my daughter, I had no choice, sir. Tension ignites, pulling you into their clash. Why did she risk everything? Will Tyler's rage destroy her? Stay to uncover their secrets. The echo of Tyler Whitestone's sharp question, "What is this?" still hung in the air, a blade slicing through the sterile silence of the master bathroom. Shaniqua Ellis stood tall, her blue uniform catching the harsh LED glow, her sleek bun gleaming like polished obsidian. The green wrap securing Amara to her back shifted slightly as the infant stirred, oblivious to the storm brewing. Tyler's jaw clenched, his hazel eyes narrowing at the sight of the child. A violation of his ironclad rule. No outsiders in his penthouse. No exceptions. The marble countertop gleamed beside a bucket of soapy water, its contents sloshing precariously, and the acrid sting of bleach burned his nostrils. Shaniqua's hand, red and raw from scrubbing, gripped the brush like a lifeline, her poise unshaken despite the accusation in his stare. "Explain yourself," Tyler demanded, voice low but edged with steel, his fingers tightening around the jacket still slung over his shoulder. "You know my rules. This," he gestured at Amara, "is unacceptable." Shaniqua's lips parted, her breath catching, but her eyes held steady, dark and unyielding. "I know, Mr. Whitestone," she said, her voice calm, yet threaded with urgency. "But my aunt, who watches Amara, had a stroke this afternoon. She's in the ICU. I couldn't leave my daughter alone, and I couldn't miss work. You made it clear what happens if I do." Her words landed like a quiet challenge, referencing the last housekeeper he'd fired for a single tardy shift. Tyler's brow furrowed, his mind racing. The penthouse, his sanctuary, was a fortress of control. Every surface polished, every rule absolute. Yet here was Shaniqua, defying him with a baby strapped to her back, scrubbing his bathroom at nearly 11 at night. "You're telling me you had no one else? No daycare, no neighbor?" He pressed, stepping closer, his shadow looming over her. The dripping faucet punctuated the silence, each plink a ticking bomb. "Daycare closes at 6, she replied, adjusting the green wrap to steady Amara, who murmured softly. "My neighbors work nights. I called everyone I know. My aunt's all I had, sir. I brought Amara so I could keep your place perfect for tomorrow's press conference. You wanted every mirror spotless." She gestured to the gleaming vanity, where a stubborn smudge from the decorating crew's paint touch-up had finally vanished under her relentless effort. Tyler's gaze flicked to the mirror, its clarity mocking his rising frustration. The press conference, his company's new AI-free software launch, was hours away, and he'd demanded perfection. Shaniqua had delivered, but at what cost? "You brought a baby in a room full of chemicals," he said, voice tightening. "You think that's safe? You think that's professional?" Her eyes flashed, a spark of defiance breaking through her composed facade. "I think it's survival, sir. I've cleaned houses since I was 14. I know how to keep my daughter safe. I diluted the bleach, kept her high on my back, away from the fumes. I didn't have a choice. You've never given me one." Her voice trembled at the edges, but her posture remained regal, the blue uniform accentuating her grace under pressure. Tyler's chest tightened. Her words stung, not just for their boldness, but for the truth they carried. He'd built his empire on precision, on rules that kept chaos at bay. Yet Shaniqua's presence, her quiet strength, and the tiny bundle on her back were chaos incarnate. He tossed his jacket onto the counter, the fabric sliding against the marble. "You could have called me," he said, though the words felt hollow even to him. Called you? Shaniqua's laugh was sharp, almost bitter. When? During your boardroom marathon. You don't answer calls from people like me, Mr. Whitestone. You don't even see us. She paused, her gaze locking onto his, unflinching. But I saw that smudge on your mirror. I stayed late to fix it. For you. The accusation hung heavy, and for a moment, Tyler felt the weight of her unseen labor. The penthouse, his pristine refuge, was her battlefield, a place where she fought to keep her world from crumbling. He glanced at Amara, her tiny chest rising and falling, her curls peeking from the green wrap. A flicker of memory stirred. His mother, overworked, invisible, scrubbing floors to keep him fed. He pushed it down, unwilling to let it soften him. This isn't about me seeing you, he said, voice colder than he intended. This is about liability. What if she got hurt? What if someone saw her here? His mind raced to the press conference, the vultures waiting for any crack in his perfect image. Shaniqua's jaw tightened, but she didn't look away. I kept her safe. I always do. You want perfection? I gave it to you. That mirror's spotless, isn't it? Her voice was steady now, a quiet fire burning beneath her words. She adjusted the wrap, her fingers brushing Amara's cheek, a mother's instinct overriding the tension. Tyler opened his mouth to retort, but a faint buzz interrupted, his phone vibrating in his pocket. He ignored it, his focus pinned on Shaniqua. Her beauty, undeniable even in the harsh light, was matched only by her defiance. The blue uniform, slightly creased from hours of work, clung to her frame, and her sleek bun remained flawless, a testament to her resilience. Yet it was her eyes, deep, unyielding, that unsettled him most. You crossed a line, he said finally, stepping back, his voice softer but still firm. This can't happen again. Shaniqua nodded, her expression unreadable. Then tell me what to do, sir. Leave now and lose my job, or stay and finish what you hired me for? Her question was a dare, forcing him to confront the reality of her choice. Before he could answer, a sharp knock echoed from the hallway. Mr. Whitestone? A woman's voice called, clipped and urgent. Lena, the night security guard, her boots clicking on the marble floor. Tyler's pulse quickened. If Lena saw Amara, the situation could spiral. Building regulations were as strict as his own, and a report could end Shaniqua's career. He glanced at her, the green wrap a glaring beacon in the dim light. Stay here, he ordered, his voice low, and moved toward the door, his mind racing. Why was he hesitating? Why hadn't he called security himself? Shaniqua's words echoed. You don't even see us. And for the first time, he wondered what he'd been blind to. As he reached the hallway, Lena's flashlight beam cut through the shadows, her radio crackling. The stakes were higher now, and Tyler felt the weight of a choice he wasn't ready to make. Would he protect his rules or the woman who'd defied them to keep his world flawless? Tyler's hand lingered over the intercom, the crackle of Lena's voice. Mr. Whitestone, everything okay? Still reverberating in the sterile air of the penthouse bathroom. His pulse thrummed, a storm of fury and doubt colliding in his chest. Shaniqua Ellis stood before him, her blue uniform catching the harsh LED glow, her sleek bun gleaming like a crown of resolve. The green wrap cradling her infant daughter, Amara, seemed to pulse with life against the cold marble tiles. Her knuckles, raw from scrubbing, gripped the brush like a lifeline, and her dark eyes held his, defiant yet brittle, as if she could sense the axe of his decision hovering. Tyler's rules were his fortress. Nobody breached them, not even a woman whose elegance and desperation were now tearing at the edges of his control. He pressed the intercom, his voice steady but laced with ice. Lena, it's under control. Stand down. A pause, then a clipped, yes, sir, before silence reclaimed the room. Tyler turned, his gaze locking on Shaniqua. Relief flickered across her face, but it was fleeting, replaced by a guarded tension. She adjusted the green wrap, her fingers trembling slightly as Amara stirred, a soft whimper breaking the stillness. Why'd you do that? Shaniqua asked, her voice low, almost a challenge. You could have let her report me. Tyler's jaw tightened, his own question echoing in his mind. Why had he protected her? He stepped closer, the click of his loafers sharp against the tile. "Don't mistake this for mercy," he said, his tone cutting. "You broke my rule. You brought a child into my home, my sanctuary, around bleach and glass. You think I'll just let that slide?" His words were a lash, but beneath them, a tremor of uncertainty. Her composure, that sleek bun unmoved by the chaos, unnerved him. She was supposed to crumble, to beg, but instead she stood tall, a mother shielding her world. Shaniqua's lips parted, her breath catching, but she didn't flinch. "I didn't choose this, Mr. Whitestone," she said, her voice steady despite the weight of her words. "My cousin Tasha, she's all I've got for Amara. She got arrested today, caught in a protest that turned ugly. I couldn't leave my baby alone, and I couldn't miss work." Her eyes burned with a fire that made Tyler's chest tighten. "You fired Maria for being 10 minutes late. You think I'd risk that? I need this job to pay for my mom's meds, to keep Amara fed. So yeah, I brought her. I kept her safe, and I kept your damn mirror spotless." Her words hit like a slap, raw and unyielding. Tyler glanced at the mirror, its surface gleaming except for that stubborn smudge she'd been battling. He wanted to argue, to point out the recklessness, but the image of her raw knuckles, the green wrap, and Amara's tiny, trusting form stopped him. He saw his mother again, her worn hands, her late-night sewing to keep him fed. The memory clawed at him, unbidden, and he hated how it softened his edges. "You should have found another way," he said, but his voice lacked its earlier venom. "You could have told me." "Told you?" Shaniqua's laugh was sharp, a blade of its own. "When? You're up there with your investors, your penthouse, your empire. People like me don't get through your gatekeepers." She shifted Amara, her movements gentle but firm, the green wrap a vivid contrast to her blue uniform. "I've been cleaning houses half my life. I know how to protect my daughter while I work. You want to fire me? Fine. But don't act like I had options." Tyler's throat tightened. Her defiance wasn't just bold. It was a mirror reflecting his own privilege at him. He'd built his empire on control, on rules that kept the world at bay. But Shaniqua's words cracked that facade. She wasn't just a housekeeper. She was a mother, a survivor, fighting battles he'd never had to face. Her beauty, those high cheekbones, that sleek bun, only amplified her strength, making her both vulnerable and unyielding. He wanted to hold his ground, to cling to his rules, but the weight of her reality pressed against him. "You're risking everything," he said, softer now, almost to himself. He gestured at Amara, her tiny hand curling in sleep. "What if she'd gotten hurt? What if that bleach spilled?" His voice cracked, betraying a flicker of concern he hadn't meant to show. Shaniqua's eyes widened, catching the shift, but she didn't soften. "I'd die before I let that happen," she said, her voice low, fierce. "Amara's my heart. I carried her here because I had to. You want your press conference to shine? I made that happen, even with her on my back." The air grew heavy, their words a taut rope stretched between them. Tyler's mind raced. He could fire her now, restore order, erase this breach. But the thought felt hollow. Her raw knuckles, the green wrap, the way she stood unbowed despite his power. It stirred something in him, something he'd buried under years of boardroom battles. His father's voice echoed in his head. "Never let them see you bend." But Shaniqua wasn't bending either, and that made her dangerous. Dangerous and compelling. A faint hum broke the silence, the air conditioning kicking on, a reminder of the penthouse's sterile perfection. Tyler ran a hand through his hair, his polished exterior fraying. "You've put me in a bind," he said, his voice rough. "My team would have you out the door by morning. The building's rules are clear. Report this, and you're done. Not just here, but anywhere in this city's elite residences." He paused, watching her. "You know that, don't you?" Shaniqua nodded, her bun glinting as she tilted her head. "I know," she said, her voice steady, but laced with a quiet dread. "But I did what I had to. For Amara, for my mom. If you're going to fire me, do it now. Let me figure out how to get us home." Her words were a dare, but her eyes betrayed a flicker of fear, not for herself, but for the child in her arms. Tyler's chest ached, a strange mix of anger and admiration. She was calling his bluff, forcing him to confront the human cost of his rules. He could see the exhaustion in her shoulders, the way her blue uniform clung to her frame, the fierce love in her every glance at Amara. He wanted to hold his ground, to be the man who never wavered, but her truth was a weight he couldn't ignore. His mother's tired eyes flashed again, her voice whispering, "Be better." The intercom buzzed again, Lena's voice sharper now. "Mr. Whitestone, I need confirmation. The footage is clear. There's a child. Protocol says I report this." Tyler's hand twitched, his eyes locked on Shaniqua's. One word and her world would collapse. But as he looked at Amara, at the green wrap glowing like a beacon, he felt the ground shift beneath him. Rules or humanity? What would he choose? Tyler's hand hovered over the intercom, Lena's insistent voice. "Mr. Whitestone, I need confirmation," cutting through the charged silence of the penthouse bathroom. His heart pounded, a chaotic rhythm of fury, doubt, and something softer, unnameable, stirred by Shaniqua Ellis's unyielding stance. She stood before him, her blue uniform catching the stark LED glow, her sleek bun a defiant crown atop her head. The green wrap securing her infant daughter, Amara, glowed like a lifeline against the cold marble. The child's soft breaths a quiet counterpoint to the storm brewing between them. Shaniqua's eyes, dark and fierce, held his, her raw knuckles still clutching the scrub brush, a testament to her labor. Tyler's rules, his fortress of control, felt like they were crumbling, and the weight of her truth pressed against his chest, forcing him to confront the human cost of his empire. He released the intercom button, his voice low and tight. "Lena," I said, "stand down. It's handled." The line went silent, but the tension in the room thickened, as if the walls themselves held their breath. Shaniqua's shoulders eased, but her gaze remained guarded. Her beauty, those high cheekbones, that perfect bun, sharpened by the exhaustion etched into her face. "You didn't have to do that," she said, her voice soft but edged with suspicion. "Why cover for me? You could have ended this." Tyler's jaw clenched, his own confusion gnawing at him. Why had he stopped Lena? He stepped back, putting distance between them, his loafers clicking on the tile like a ticking clock. "Don't get it twisted," he said, his tone sharp but wavering. "You broke my rule. You brought a child into my home, around bleach and glass like it's nothing. You think I'm okay with that?" His words were meant to wound, to reassert control, but they felt hollow. Her presence, elegant, unbowed, with Amara's tiny form nestled against her, challenged everything he'd built. Shaniqua's lips parted, a flicker of hurt crossing her face before she masked it. She adjusted the green wrap, her fingers gentle but trembling, as if shielding Amara from his anger. "You think I wanted this," she said, her voice rising, a raw edge breaking through her composure. "My cousin Tasha was supposed to watch Amara. She's in a holding cell right now, caught in a protest she didn't start. My mom's too sick to help, and I'm all Amara's got." Her eyes blazed, a mother's fire burning through her fatigue. "I didn't bring her here to disrespect you. I brought her because I can't lose this job. You made that clear when you fired Maria." The name, Maria, hung like a ghost between them. Tyler's throat tightened, the memory of his swift decision to fire her predecessor stinging now. He'd seen it as necessary, a way to maintain order. But Shaniqua's words turned it into a weapon. "You should have found another way," he said, his voice quieter, almost a plea. "You could have told someone, my assistant, anyone." But even as he spoke, he knew it was a lie. His world was walled off. His assistants were gatekeepers who filtered out people like her. The realization twisted in his gut, a shard of guilt he couldn't shake. Shaniqua's laugh was low, bitter, cutting through the air like a blade. "Your assistant? The one who barely looks at me when I clock in? You live in a different world, Mr. Whitestone." She shifted Amara, her blue uniform creasing slightly, her bun still flawless despite the late hour. "I've been cleaning houses since I was a teenager. I know how to keep my baby safe while I work. I stayed late to fix that smudge on your mirror, to make sure your press conference looks perfect. You want to punish me for that?" Her words were a mirror, reflecting his privilege at him with brutal clarity. Tyler's gaze flicked to the mirror, its surface gleaming now, the smudge nearly gone. He wanted to argue, to cling to his rules, but the image of her raw knuckles, the green wrap, and Amara's peaceful face stopped him. Another memory surged, his mother hunched over a sewing machine, her fingers bleeding from late-night work to keep him fed. He'd buried that image under years of wealth, but Shaniqua's defiance dragged it back, raw and unyielding. "You're playing with fire," he said, his voice softer, almost broken. If that bleach had spilled, if she'd gotten hurt. He stopped, his chest tightening at the thought. Why did he care? She was his employee, a rule breaker, nothing more. Yet the way she stood, her elegance unshaken, her love for Amara radiating through every word, made her more than that. She was a force, and it shook him. "I'd never let that happen," Shaniqua said, her voice fierce, almost a growl. "Amara's my everything. I check every bottle, every surface. I've carried her through worse than this, nights when I didn't know if we'd eat." Her eyes glistened, but she blinked hard, refusing to let tears fall. "You don't know what it's like, Mr. Whitestone, to choose between your child and a paycheck. I chose both tonight, and I'm not sorry." The air grew heavy, her words a weight Tyler couldn't shrug off. He ran a hand through his hair, his polished facade cracking. Her beauty, those sharp cheekbones, that sleek bun, made her defiance all the more striking, like a painting of strength in a world he'd tried to sterilize. He wanted to hold his ground, to be the man who never bent, but her truth was a tide pulling him under. His mother's voice echoed again. "Be better than your father." His father who'd fired workers without a second thought, who'd built wealth on their backs. "You've put me in an impossible position," Tyler said, his voice rough, almost a confession. "My team will want your head for this. The building's cameras don't lie. Lena saw everything. If this gets out, it's not just your job. It's your future in this city." He paused, watching her. "You knew the risk, didn't you?" Shaniqua nodded, her bun glinting as she tilted her head. "I knew," she said, her voice steady but heavy. "But I'd do it again. For Amara, for my mom. If you're going to fire me, do it now. Don't leave me guessing." Her words were a challenge, but her eyes held a quiet plea. Not for herself, but for the child in her arms. Tyler's chest ached, torn between his empire's rules and the woman standing before him, her love fiercer than his anger. He could end this, restore order, but her raw knuckles, the green wrap, and Amara's tiny breaths held him captive. The intercom sat silent, but Lena's threat loomed. One call could unravel Shaniqua's world, or Tyler could choose another path. His mother's tired eyes burned in his mind, daring him to decide. The silence in the penthouse bathroom was a fragile thing, broken only by the faint hum of the air conditioning and Amara's soft breaths against Shaniqua Ellis's back. Tyler Whitestone stood frozen, his hand still hovering near the intercom after silencing Lena's probing voice. His heart thudded, a chaotic mix of anger, guilt, and something softer, a flicker of admiration he couldn't suppress. Shaniqua faced him, her blue uniform catching the stark LED light, her sleek bun a beacon of defiance atop her head. The green wrap cradling her infant daughter glowed like a defiant ember against the cold marble tiles. Her eyes, dark and unyielding, held a storm of fear and resolve, her raw knuckles trembling around the scrub brush. Tyler's rules, his unyielding fortress, were cracking under the weight of her presence, and the choice he'd just made to protect her from Lena's report felt like a betrayal of his own empire. "Why'd you do that?" Shaniqua's voice was a whisper, sharp with suspicion, cutting through the tension like a blade. She adjusted the green wrap, her fingers steadying Amara's tiny form, her elegance unshaken, despite the exhaustion carving lines into her face. "You could have let her report me. Ended this right here." Her words were a challenge, but beneath them lay a tremor of vulnerability, a mother bracing for the fall. Tyler's jaw tightened, his own confusion clawing at him. Why had he stopped Lena? He stepped forward, the click of his loafers echoing like a warning shot. "Don't think this changes anything," he said, his voice low, edged with a frustration he couldn't fully mask. "You broke my rules, Shaniqua. You brought a child into my home, around bleach, glass, and Who knows what else? You think I'm okay with that? His words were meant to reassert control, to rebuild the walls she'd shaken, but they rang hollow. Her beauty, those sharp cheekbones, that flawless bun, made her defiance all the more disarming, a force he hadn't anticipated. Shaniqua's lips parted, a flicker of hurt flashing in her eyes before she buried it. You think I wanted to bring her here? She said, her voice rising, raw with emotion. My cousin Tasha's in a cell, Mr. Whitestone. She was supposed to watch Amara, but she got caught in a protest that turned bad. My mom's too sick to help, and I'm all Amara's got. Her fingers tightened on the green wrap, her knuckles whitening. I didn't do this to spit on your rules. I did it because I need this job, because my mom's meds cost more than I make in a month, because Amara needs formula, clothes, a future. Her voice cracked, a raw wound exposed, but she held his gaze unbowed. Tyler's chest tightened, her words slicing through his defenses. He wanted to argue, to point out the recklessness, but the image of her raw knuckles, the green wrap in Amara's tiny curls stopped him. A memory surged, his mother, her hands bleeding from late-night sewing, her eyes heavy with worry for him. He'd buried that pain under years of wealth, but Shaniqua's voice dragged it back, sharp and unyielding. You should have found another way, he said, his tone softer now, almost a plea. You could have told someone, my team, anyone. But even as he spoke, he knew it was a lie. His world was a fortress, his assistants gatekeepers, who dismissed people like her without a second thought. Shaniqua's laugh was low, bitter, a sound that cut deeper than her words. Your team, she said, her bun glinting as she tilted her head. The ones who look through me like I'm invisible? You don't get it, do you? People like me don't get to call billionaires for help. She shifted Amara, her movements gentle but fierce, the green wrap a vivid contrast to her blue uniform. I've been cleaning houses since I was a kid. I know how to keep my daughter safe while I work. I stayed late to fix that smudge on your mirror, to make sure your press conference is perfect. You want to fire me for that? Her words were a mirror, reflecting his privilege with brutal clarity. Tyler's gaze flicked to the mirror, its surface now gleaming, the smudge nearly erased by her relentless effort. He wanted to cling to his rules, to the control that defined him, but her truth was a tide pulling him under. His mother's face flashed again, her tired eyes, her calloused hands, her quiet plea to be better than his father, who'd crushed workers without blinking. Shaniqua wasn't just a housekeeper. She was a mother, a fighter, her love for Amara radiating through every word, every glance. You're playing a dangerous game, he said, his voice breaking, betraying a concern he hadn't meant to show. What if something had happened to her? A spill, a slip? He stopped, his throat tightening at the thought. Why did he care? She was an employee, a rule breaker, nothing more. Yet her elegance, her unyielding strength, made her something else entirely, a force that shook his world. I'd die before I let that happen, Shaniqua said, her voice fierce, almost a growl. Amara's my heart. I check every bottle, every corner. I've carried her through worse. Nights when I didn't know if we'd eat, when I didn't know if my mom would wake up. Her eyes glistened, but she blinked hard, refusing tears. You don't know what it's like to choose between your child and a paycheck. I chose both tonight, and I'd do it again. The air grew heavy, their words a taut rope stretched between them. Tyler ran a hand through his hair, his polished facade crumbling. Her beauty, those high cheekbones, that sleek bun, made Ralph Ellison's invisible man seem all too real. She was seen yet unseen, her strength ignored until now. He wanted to hold his ground, to be the man who never bent, but her truth was a weight he couldn't ignore. His mother's voice echoed, "Be better." "You've put me in a corner," he said, his voice rough, almost a confession. "My team would demand your termination. Lena's footage doesn't lie. She saw everything. If this gets out, you're not just losing this job. You're done in the city's elite circles." He paused, watching her. "You knew that risk, didn't you?" Shaniqua nodded, her bun glinting as she tilted her head. "I knew," she said, her voice steady but heavy with dread. "But I'd rather lose this job than lose my daughter. If you're going to fire me, do it now. Let me know where I stand." Her words were a dare, but her eyes held a plea, not for herself but for Amara, cradled in that green wrap. Tyler's chest ached, torn between his empire's rules and the woman before him, her love fiercer than his anger. Her raw knuckles, the green wrap, Amara's tiny breaths, they held him captive. The intercom sat silent, but Lena's threat lingered, a shadow over them both. He could end this, restore order, but her truth, her strength, her beauty, those were chains he couldn't break. The weight of Shaniqua Ellis's words, "I'd rather lose this job than lose my daughter," hung in the penthouse bathroom like a storm cloud, heavy and unyielding. Tyler Whitestone stood rooted, his polished exterior fraying, his heart a battlefield of anger, guilt, and an unfamiliar ache. Shaniqua faced him, her blue uniform catching the stark LED light, her sleek bun a defiant crown that refused to bow. The green wrap cradling her infant daughter Amara glowed against the cold marble, the child's tiny breaths a quiet anchor in the chaos. Her raw knuckles, still gripping the scrub brush, trembled with exhaustion, but her eyes burned with a mother's fire, fierce and unapologetic. Tyler's rules, his fortress of control, were crumbling under her gaze, and his decision to silence Lena's report felt like a crack in his armor, one he couldn't explain, even to himself. He turned away, his loafers clicking on the tile as he gestured toward the door. "Come with me," he said, his voice rough, almost a command. Shaniqua hesitated, her bun glinting as she tilted her head, suspicion flickering in her eyes. But she followed, her steps careful to keep Amara steady, the green wrap a vibrant contrast to her blue uniform. They moved into the penthouse's living room, where the soft glow of a crystal chandelier bathed the white leather furniture in warmth, a stark shift from the bathroom's sterile chill. Tyler stopped by a sleek bar cart, pouring a glass of water with hands that betrayed a slight tremble. He handed it to her. "Drink. You look like you're about to collapse." Shaniqua took the glass, her fingers brushing his, her raw knuckles stark against the crystal. "I don't need your pity," she said, her voice low but sharp, the elegance of her bun in uniform belying the strain in her posture. She set the glass down, untouched, and adjusted Amara, whose tiny hand twitched in sleep. "You covered for me with Lena. Why? What's your angle, Mr. Whitestone?" Tyler's chest tightened, her suspicion cutting deeper than he expected. He leaned against the bar cart, the cool metal grounding him as he fought to keep his composure. "No angle," he said, but his voice wavered, betraying the lie. "You broke my rules, Shaniqua. You brought a child into my home, risked everything, my reputation, my control. I should have let Lena report you." His words were meant to sting, to rebuild the walls she'd shaken, but they felt hollow. Her presence, those sharp cheekbones, that flawless bun, made his anger feel like a mask, one slipping with every second. Shaniqua's eyes narrowed, but a flicker of vulnerability crossed her face, softening her defiance. "Then why didn't you?" she asked, her voice quieter now, almost a plea. "You could have ended me right there. One word and I'm out, barred from every high-end job in this city. Why risk that for me?" She shifted Amara, her movements gentle but weighted with exhaustion, the green wrap a beacon of her love. Tyler watched, his throat tightening. Why had he protected her? The question gnawed at him, stirring memories he'd buried deep. His mother, her hands worn from endless work, her eyes pleading for him to be more than his father. He ran a hand through his hair, his polished facade cracking. "I don't know," he admitted, the words spilling out like a confession. "Maybe because I saw your hands. Those cuts, that brush. Maybe because I know what it's like to have a mother who'd do anything." His voice broke, and he turned away, staring at the chandelier's light dancing on the glass walls. "My mom worked nights, bled for me. I don't talk about it, but I see her in you, and it's messing with me." Shaniqua's breath caught, her eyes widening. For a moment her guard dropped, the elegance of her bun and uniform softening under the weight of his words. "You don't know me," she said, but her voice trembled, betraying a crack in her own armor. "You don't know what it's like to carry your whole world on your back." She nodded at Amara, her fingers brushing the green wrap. When Tasha got arrested, I had no one. My mom's sick, heart failure. I'm paying for her meds, her rent, and Amara's formula. I brought her here because I had to, because losing this job means losing them. Her words landed like a punch, raw and unfiltered. Tyler's gaze dropped to Amara, her tiny curls peeking from the wrap, her innocence a stark contrast to the storm between them. He wanted to argue, to cling to his rules, but her truth was a tide pulling him under. His mother's face flashed again, her tired eyes, her calloused hands, her quiet strength. He'd built his empire to escape that life, but Shaniqua's fight brought it roaring back. "You're risking her," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "What if something happened? Bleach, a slip. You can't control everything." Shaniqua's eyes glistened, but she blinked hard, refusing tears. "I control what I can," she said, her voice fierce, almost a growl. "I check every bottle, every surface. I've carried Amara through nights we had no heat, no food. You think I'd let her get hurt?" Her bun gleamed as she leaned forward, her beauty amplifying her strength. "You live in this penthouse, Mr. Whitestone, but I live in the real world. I brought her here to keep her safe, to keep my mom alive. You want to judge me? Go ahead. But I'm not sorry." The air grew heavy, their words a taut rope stretched to breaking. Tyler's chest ached, torn between his empire's rules and the woman before him, her love fiercer than his anger. Her raw knuckles, the green wrap, Amara's tiny breaths, they were chains he couldn't break. He wanted to hold his ground, to be the man who never bent, but her truth was a mirror, reflecting his privilege, his isolation. His mother's voice echoed, "Be better than your father." His father, who'd crushed workers without a thought, who'd valued wealth over humanity. "You've put me in a bind," he said, his voice rough, almost a surrender. "Lena's footage is out there. My team will see it by morning. They'll push for your termination, and the building's rules back them up." He paused, watching her. "You knew the stakes, didn't you?" Shaniqua nodded, her bun glinting as she tilted her head. "I knew," she said, her voice steady but heavy with dread. "But I'd do it again. For Amara. For my mom. If you're going to fire me, do it now. Let me know where we stand." Her words were a dare, but her eyes held a plea, not for herself but for the child in her arms. Tyler's heart pounded, his world tilting. Her beauty, those cheekbones, that sleek bun, made her defiance unbearable, a force he couldn't ignore. He could end this, restore order, but her love, her strength, held him captive. The chandelier's light flickered, casting shadows that danced like his doubts. He'd silenced Lena, but the footage remained, a ticking bomb. Would he let it detonate, or would he find another way? The penthouse living room, bathed in the warm glow of its crystal chandelier, felt like a fragile truce between Tyler Whitestone and Shaniqua Ellis. Her words, "I'd do it again. For Amara. For my mom," still reverberated, a defiant pulse that shook the foundations of Tyler's world. Shaniqua stood before him, her blue uniform clinging to her frame, her sleek bun glinting like a beacon of resolve. The green wrap cradling her infant daughter, Amara, glowed against the white leather furniture, the child's soft breaths a quiet anchor in the storm. Her raw knuckles, still clutching the glass of water Tyler had offered, trembled with exhaustion, but her eyes burned with a mother's unyielding love. Tyler's heart churned, torn between the rigid rules of his empire and the raw humanity of the woman before him. His decision to silence Lena's report had been a crack in his armor, but now, with Shaniqua's plea for clarity, that crack threatened to split wide open. Tyler's gaze dropped to the floor, his polished loafers reflecting the chandelier's light. "You're not walking out tonight," he said, his voice rough, almost a growl. "Take the guest suite. I'll drive you home in the morning." The words spilled out before he could stop them, a concession that felt like a betrayal of his own code. Shaniqua's eyes widened, her bun tilting slightly as she leaned back, suspicion carving lines into her face. "Why?" she asked, her voice low, sharp with distrust. "You don't owe me anything. You could fire me right now. Clear your conscience. What's stopping you?" Her question pierced him, forcing him to confront the turmoil roiling inside. He turned away, pacing toward the glass wall overlooking the Hudson River, its dark waters glittering under the city's neon. "You think I want to be the bad guy?" he said, his voice cracking, betraying a vulnerability he hadn't meant to show. "You broke my rules, Shaniqua. You brought a child into my home, risked my reputation, my control. But I saw your hands, those cuts, that brush. I saw you fighting for her." He nodded at Amara, her tiny curls peeking from the green wrap. "I don't know why, but I can't just throw you out." Shaniqua's breath caught, her fingers tightening on the glass, her raw knuckles stark against its clarity. Her blue uniform creased as she shifted Amara, her elegance unshaken despite the weight of her exhaustion. "You don't know me," she said, her voice trembling, a mix of defiance and fear. "You don't know what it's like to wake up every day wondering if you can keep your kid fed, your mom alive." Her eyes glistened, but she blinked hard, refusing tears. "When Tasha got arrested, I had no one. My mom's heart is failing. She's in a hospital bed, and every pill costs more than I make in a week. I brought Amara here because I had to, because losing this job means losing them both." Her words were a blade slicing through Tyler's defenses. He turned, his chest aching, her truth a mirror reflecting his privilege. He saw his mother again, her worn hands, her nights spent sewing, her quiet strength to keep him fed. He'd buried that pain under his billions, but Shaniqua's voice dragged it back, raw and unyielding. "You're risking her life," he said, his voice barely above a whisper, the concern slipping through despite himself. "What if something had happened? A spill? A fall? How do you live with that fear?" Shaniqua's lips parted, a flicker of pain crossing her face before she masked it. "I live with it every day," she said, her voice fierce, almost a snarl. "I check every bottle, every surface. I've carried Amara through nights with no heat, no food. Last month, I sat in the ER with her, praying she'd breathe through a fever because I couldn't afford the copay." Her bun glinted as she leaned forward, her beauty amplifying her strength. "You think I'm reckless? I'm surviving. I stayed late to make your mirror perfect, to keep your press conference flawless. I did it with her on my back. Judge me if you want, but I'm not sorry." The air grew thick, their words a taut rope stretched to breaking. Tyler's throat tightened, her confession a weight he couldn't shrug off. Her beauty, those sharp cheekbones, that sleek bun, made her defiance unbearable, a force that challenged everything he'd built. He wanted to hold his ground, to be the man who never bent. But her love for Amara, her raw honesty, was a tide pulling him under. His mother's voice echoed again. "Be better than your father." His father who'd fired workers without blinking, who'd valued wealth over humanity. "I'm not firing you," Tyler said, the words spilling out like a surrender. "Not tonight." He paused, his gaze locking on hers. "But this isn't over. Lena's footage is out there. My team will see it by morning, and they'll want answers. You've put me in a corner, Shaniqua." His voice was rough, almost a plea, as if begging her to understand the bind she'd created. Shaniqua's eyes widened, her bun tilting as she processed his words. "Then why not end it now?" she asked, her voice softer, but still edged with distrust. "You're the boss. One word and I'm gone. Why drag this out?" She shifted Amara, her fingers brushing the green wrap, her raw knuckles a stark reminder of her fight. "I need to know where I stand. For her." Her voice broke, a mother's fear laid bare, and Tyler felt it like a punch to the gut. He ran a hand through his hair, his polished facade crumbling. "Because I saw you," he said, his voice low, almost a confession. "I saw you scrub that mirror, carry your daughter, keep my world perfect while yours was falling apart. I don't know how to square that with my rules." He paused, his eyes dropping to Amara, her tiny hand twitching in sleep. "I'm not my father. I don't want to be the man who destroys you for doing what you had to." Shaniqua's breath hitched, her eyes glistening, but she held herself tall, her bun and uniform a testament to her strength. "I don't need your charity," she said, her voice trembling but firm. "I need a chance to work, to keep my family alive. If you're not firing me, what are you doing?" Tyler's chest ached, her question a challenge he wasn't ready to answer. He wanted to promise something, anything, But the words caught in his throat. The green wrap, Amara's curls, Shaniqua's raw knuckles. They were chains binding him to a choice he couldn't yet name. The chandelier's light flickered, casting shadows that danced like his doubts. Lena's footage loomed, a ticking bomb, but for now he'd bought Shaniqua time. The question was, what would he do with it? The chandelier's warm glow in the penthouse living room had faded from Tyler Whitestone's mind, but the weight of Shaniqua Ellis's words, "I don't need your charity, I need a chance," clung to him like damp air. Her blue uniform, creased yet elegant, and her sleek bun, glinting like polished obsidian, stood out against the white leather furniture as she cradled Amara in the vibrant green wrap. Her eyes, fierce with a mother's love, had dared him to act, and Tyler's impulsive promise to let her stay the night felt like a line crossed, a line he couldn't uncross. His heart pounded, torn between the rigid control of his empire and the raw humanity of the woman before him. The thread of Lena's footage loomed, a shadow ready to unravel Shaniqua's world, and Tyler knew the morning would bring a reckoning. But for now, her strength held him captive, a force he couldn't ignore. Tyler gestured toward a hallway, his voice gruff but softer than before. "The guest suite's down there. Get some rest." He paused, his gaze flickering to Amara, her tiny curls peeking from the wrap. "We'll talk tomorrow." Shaniqua's eyes narrowed, suspicion etched into her features, but she nodded, her bun tilting slightly as she turned. Her steps were measured, the blue uniform swaying with a grace that belied her exhaustion. Tyler watched her go, his chest tight with a mix of relief and dread. He'd bought her time, but at what cost? Morning light spilled through the penthouse's glass walls, casting sharp angles across the mahogany table in the private office where Tyler now stood. The city skyline glittered beyond, a reminder of the empire he'd built on unwavering rules. He'd summoned his management team, 3 suits with clipped voices and skeptical eyes, to address the breach. Shaniqua waited outside, her blue uniform pristine despite the sleepless night, her bun flawless, Amara asleep in the green wrap. Tyler's pulse quickened as he faced his team, their folders open, Lena's security footage cued on a tablet. The image was damning. Shaniqua scrubbing the mirror, Amara on her back. His rules demanded her termination, but her words, her fight, burned in his mind. "We have a situation," Tyler began, his voice steady but strained. "Last night, my housekeeper brought her child into the penthouse, against policy." He gestured at the tablet, the frozen image glaring. "The footage is clear. Protocol says she's gone." His words were clinical, but his heart wasn't in them. He saw Shaniqua's raw knuckles, her fierce love for Amara, and his mother's tired eyes flashed again, a ghost urging him to be better. Victor, his operations manager, leaned forward, his glasses glinting with cold efficiency. "She's a liability, Tyler," he said, his voice smooth but cutting. "A child in your home? Around chemicals? This isn't just a breach. It's a PR nightmare waiting to happen. The press conference is in hours. If this leaks, the media will tear us apart." He tapped the tablet, his lip curling. "She's a single mother, barely scraping by. We can't afford to keep someone who disregards rules like this." Tyler's jaw tightened, Victor's words stoking a fire in his chest. He saw Shaniqua outside, her silhouette framed by the glass door, her bun a defiant crown. "She stayed late to fix a smudge on the mirror," he said, his voice low, almost a growl. "A smudge your decorators left. She made sure this place was perfect for the press conference. You're calling that a liability?" His words surprised even him, laced with a protectiveness he hadn't expected. Victor's eyes narrowed, unfazed. "She broke your rule, Tyler. You fired people for less. Maria, for one. You let this slide, and every employee thinks they can bring their kids to work. You want chaos?" He leaned back, arms crossed. "She's not worth the risk. Not someone like her." The implication hung heavy. Her status, her race, her struggle, making Tyler's blood boil. "Don't!" Tyler snapped, his voice sharp enough to cut glass. "Don't you dare reduce her to someone like her. She's the reason this penthouse is flawless right now." His heart pounded, a mix of anger and guilt. He saw Shaniqua's face, her raw confession about her mother's illness, her cousin's arrest. He saw his own mother working herself to the bone, ignored by men like Victor. She's not a liability. She's the backbone of this place. The room fell silent, the other managers exchanging uneasy glances. Victor adjusted his glasses, his voice cold. You're letting emotion cloud your judgment. This isn't personal, it's business. The footage is out there. Lena's ready to report it to the building board. If they act, she's barred from every elite residence in Manhattan. You want to stake your reputation on her? Tyler's chest ached, the weight of Shaniqua's world pressing against his own. He glanced at her through the glass, her blue uniform catching the morning light, her bun unmoved by the chaos. She was listening, her eyes glistening, but her posture unyielding, Amara's green wrap a beacon of her strength. He wanted to cling to his rules, to the control that defined him, but her love, her fight, was a force he couldn't ignore. His mother's voice echoed, "Be better than your father." His father, who'd crushed workers without a thought, who'd valued profit over people. "I'm not my father," Tyler said, his voice low, almost a vow. "Shaniqua stays. We're launching an emergency support program for employees. Childcare, medical costs, whatever they need to keep working without choosing between their families and their jobs." His words stunned the room, even himself. Victor's jaw dropped, his pen frozen midair. "Tyler, that's unprecedented. The cost of losing her is higher," Tyler cut in, his voice fierce. "She saved this press conference, Victor. She carried her daughter and still made this place perfect. You want to talk business? That's value." He glanced at Shaniqua again, her eyes wide, a tear slipping down her cheek. Her bun gleamed, her uniform a testament to her resilience. He felt a pang, admiration, guilt, a need to make this right. Victor shook his head, his voice tight. "You're risking everything for one woman." Tyler leaned forward, his eyes blazing. "No, I'm fixing what's broken. People like her keep this empire running. It's time we stop breaking them." His heart raced. The decision, a weight lifted, and a new one taken. Shaniqua's silhouette outside the glass felt like a mirror, reflecting the man he wanted to be. He turned to Shaniqua, beckoning her in. "Show me how you got that smudge off," he said, a faint smile breaking through. "I need to learn something." Shaniqua's lips parted, a hesitant smile flickering as she wiped her tear. "You'd ruin your suit, Mr. Whitestone," she said, her voice soft but warm, her bun glinting with quiet triumph. The morning's confrontation in the penthouse office lingered like a pulse in Tyler Whitestone's chest. His words, "I'm fixing what's broken," still echoing as he stood amidst the glittering chaos of the press conference. Shaniqua Ellis's silhouette, framed by the glass door, her blue uniform pristine, her sleek bun glinting, had burned into his mind. Her quiet triumph, that tear-streaked smile as she teased him about ruining his suit, held a weight he couldn't shake. The green wrap cradling her infant daughter, Amara, had glowed like a beacon of resilience, a reminder of the line he'd crossed by defending her. Tyler's heart churned, torn between the empire he'd built on control and the new path he'd chosen, one sparked by Shaniqua's fierce love and his own buried guilt. Now, as the press conference unfolded, he faced the consequences of that choice, his resolve tested under the weight of his own reflection. The penthouse buzzed with reporters, their camera flashes bouncing off the polished marble floors, the glass walls framing the Hudson River's dark shimmer. Microphones bristled around a sleek podium where Tyler was set to unveil his company's latest software breakthrough. The mirror Shaniqua had scrubbed gleamed behind him, flawless, a silent testament to her effort. Yet Tyler's mind wasn't on the tech specs or the investors watching. It was on her raw knuckles, her unwavering gaze, the green wrap that held her world. He adjusted his tie, his polished exterior a mask hiding the turmoil within. He'd stood up to Victor, promised a support program for employees like Shaniqua. But the cost of that stand loomed. Would it weaken his empire or redefine it? Outside, beyond the glass walls, Shaniqua stepped into the Manhattan night, her blue uniform catching the neon glow of the city's lights. Her bun, sleek and unyielding, framed her face as she cradled Amara, the green wrap a vibrant splash against the urban dusk. She paused under a street lamp, its light casting a halo around her, and whispered, "We're okay, baby girl." Her voice trembled, a mix of relief and exhaustion, her heart still racing from the morning's victory. Tyler's defense, his fierce rebuke of Victor's prejudice, had been a lifeline, but doubt gnawed at her. Was it real, or would his promise, like so many others, fade under the weight of his world? Her fingers brushed Amara's curls, her love a fierce anchor grounding her against the uncertainty. Tyler's gaze drifted to the glass wall, catching his own reflection. A man in a tailored suit, the billionaire who'd built an empire on control. But beneath that image was another, his mother, her hands worn from sewing, her eyes pleading for him to be better than his father. Shaniqua had stirred that memory, her strength a mirror to his mother's, her fight a challenge to his legacy. He'd promised her a chance, a program to support workers like her, but the weight of that promise pressed against him. Victor's warning, "You're risking everything for one woman," echoed a shadow of doubt. Had he gone too far, or not far enough? A reporter's question snapped him back. "Mr. Whitestone, how does this launch redefine your company's future?" Tyler cleared his throat, his voice steady but heavy. "It's about building something that lasts," he said, his words carrying a double meaning. "Something that values the people who make it possible." His eyes flicked to the mirror, where Shaniqua's effort shone. He saw her again, standing outside the office, her bun glinting, her tear-streaked smile a quiet triumph. His heart ached, a mix of pride and fear. He'd taken a stand, but the footage from Lena's cameras still lingered, a ticking bomb that could unravel everything. Shaniqua, under the street lamp, adjusted the green wrap, her fingers trembling as she held Amara close. Her blue uniform, creased from the long night, felt like armor, her bun a crown of resilience. She'd faced Tyler's anger, Lena's threat, Victor's prejudice, and come out standing. But the victory felt fragile. She'd heard promises before, bosses who spoke of fairness but turned cold when it mattered. Tyler was different, or so he seemed, but doubt gnawed at her. "We'll make it, baby," she murmured to Amara, her voice a vow. Her heart swelled with love, but fear lingered. Fear of losing this job, of failing her mother, of leaving Amara with nothing. Tyler stepped away from the podium, the press conference winding down, the reporter's chatter a dull hum. He moved to the glass wall, his reflection staring back. A man who'd built an empire but now questioned its cost. Shaniqua's words, "I'd do it again, for Amara, for my mom," rang in his ears, her love a force that had cracked his armor. He thought of his mother, her sacrifices buried under his wealth, and realized he'd been running from her truth. Shaniqua had forced him to face it, her blue uniform and sleek bun, a symbol of strength he couldn't ignore. He'd promised a program, childcare, medical support, but it was more than policy. It was a chance to be the man his mother had wanted, not his father. Outside, Shaniqua started walking, the city's neon lights casting long shadows. Her bun caught the glow, her uniform a quiet defiance against the world that tried to break her. She felt the weight of Amara's warmth, the green wrap a lifeline tying her to hope. Tyler's stand had given her a chance, but she knew the fight wasn't over. Lena's footage could still surface. Victor's prejudice could resurge. Yet for the first time she felt seen, not as a housekeeper, but as a mother, a woman, a force. Her heart pounded, a mix of fear and resolve, as she whispered to Amara, "We're stronger than they know." Tyler pressed a hand to the glass, his reflection blurring with the city beyond. The press conference had been a success, the mirror flawless, but his victory felt hollow. Shaniqua's fight, her love, had rewritten his rules, not just for his empire, but for himself. He saw his mother's eyes in hers, a call to be better, to build something that mattered. The program was a start, but it was her strength, her raw knuckles, her green wrap, her unyielding bun, that would haunt him. He'd chosen humanity over control, but at what cost? The footage lingered, a shadow over them both. He turned back to the room, the reporters oblivious to the battle he'd fought. Shaniqua's absence felt like a void. Her presence was etched into his soul. He'd given her a chance, but the real test was coming. For now he held on to her image, her blue uniform, her sleek bun, her fierce love, and knew he'd never be the same. As the city lights fade and Tyler's reflection lingers in the glass, Shaniqua's strength, her blue uniform, her sleek bun, her green-wrapped Amara, leaves an indelible mark. Their story challenges us. Would you uphold rigid rules or risk everything for humanity? Tyler chose to bend. Shaniqua fought for her daughter. What would you do in their shoes? Have you ever broken a rule for something or someone you love? Share your thoughts below. Your story matters. Thank you for joining us in this journey of heart and defiance. Hit like, subscribe, and ring the bell to catch more tales that stir the soul. We'll see you in the next story, where choices reshape lives.